text says in verse 7 of chapter 11, then after this, he said to his disciples, let us go to Judea again. The disciples said to him, Rabbi, the Jews were just now seeking to stone you. And are you going there again? Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him. After saying these things, he said to them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go to wake him up. I know the plan I have for your life. Plans are good. We hear the instruction from Jesus in Luke 14. If a man is going to build a tower, he needs to sit down and count the cost. Having a good plan is great. The Bible says that in a multitude of counsel, there is safety. But someone having a plan for my life, not so great. I know the plan I have for your life. Our sinful, selfish persona and attitudes display an adverse reaction to this statement. A plan for my life. Oh, really? You have a plan for my life. You know me? Have you planned for all of the future contingencies? Do you have my best interest at heart? So you want me to let go of the steering wheel of my life and just let you run my life? Jesus did. The text says that Mary and Martha sent an envoy to Jesus to inform him of Lazarus' illness. And the guy arrives there, and you remember, as we have discussed, that Jesus waited an additional 2 days in revival. This is confusing, questionable. Jesus, we're on a schedule here. I've already rushed this guy out to speak with you. Lazarus is languishing here at the house. I need you here now. But Jesus waits. And then when he does decide to go, his disciples are appalled. But what they did not know was that Jesus kept a perfect schedule. His life was completely in tune with the plan of God for him. Jesus knew from the beginning what he was supposed to be doing. Mom and dad go to church, they leave church, and Jesus stays, hanging out with the pastors and the board of directors, discussing godly things, and finally mom and dad come back. Where are you? What are you doing? We were looking for you. He says, now, you do know why I'm here. I must be about my Father's business. Jesus was so in tune with God's plan for his life, he knew when it was time to start. They're at a wedding and folk run out of wine, And mother comes to him and says, listen now, you are a particularly brilliant strategist. I'd like for you to do something about the problem. And he says, my hour has not yet come. And then later on, his brothers decided, listen now, if you're all that, all of who you say you are, chapter 7, listen, why don't you go up to the feast, show everybody who you are. They're trying to be his publicist. Jesus says, no, you go ahead. It's not time for me to go yet. And then ultimately, we hear in chapters 13 of John on into chapter 17, Jesus knew that his hour had come. So consequently, the Bible says he loved them to the end. And brothers and sisters, I'd like to say to you parenthetically here, while I try to make my point, that there is no such thing as you getting older as a Christian and choosing to say, well, it's you young Christians' time now. I've had my time. No, right up to the end, Jesus continued to serve. The Bible says that he washed the disciples' feet and he loved them until the end. So that because of that, in the face of the disciples doubting, and in the face of the threat of death and danger, Jesus was still committed to God's schedule for his life. He will not let nothing keep him from doing what God designed him to do. Jesus said, as you will remember, that I must be about my Father's business. And then he says, listen, my heart is one of a shepherd, and I must keep my sheep safe. Jesus not only followed the schedule for his own life, committed to the will of the Father, but in doing so, he blessed those around him. He was completely yielded to God's plan for his life. And as a result, Jesus feared no man. I need to calm down so that I can say it properly. Jesus, because he was absolutely and totally committed to God's predetermined plan for his life, he wasn't scared of anybody. Nor did he allow men's plans to dictate how he moved. And he would let nothing, because he's committed to the plan of God for his life, he would let nothing keep him from serving the way God wanted him to serve. My question to you is, do you want to live a life without fear? A life that is unhindered by someone else's plan for you? Do you want to live in such a way that you're able to complete the tasks of God as it relates to serving people around you? Then I'd say to you, yield your life completely over to God. Did you hear what I said? Do you want to live a life without fear? A life that is unobstructed by what others think you ought to do? And do you want to live a life that is in the best service of the people around you? Then I'd say to you unquestionably that you need to yield your life to God's plan. When I was in grade school, we wrote in tablets, not like the people of old on tablets, and not like the people of new on tablets. We wrote in tablets. The spiral binding was made of wire, and the paper was linked directly into the wire. And on more than one occasion, in trying to turn in my assignment, I ripped my assignment in half, trying to free the paper from the wire binding. And then some genius came up with an idea. Perforated paper. You know, the little lines that sort of give you a guideline. It's a pre-cut line, so that now when I attempt to remove my assignment from the tablet, my notebook, I had a guideline. Sister Dara, I'm trying to say that I was able to finish my assignment when I followed the pre-cut plan for removing my assignment. I'm trying to say now that when that line was not there, it caused me great consternation and pain and anxiety, because there's always the fear of messing up. But whoever that genius was, when he put those lines there, it allowed me to complete my assignment when I followed the lines. I only mean to say to you here today that your life, my life, has been organized by God. There is a plan for your life. Your life is perforated. Lines already cut out. And the worst thing you can do is try not to follow the lines. We got folk all over who are trying to run away from the lines. And the easiest thing in the world to complete your assignment, JT, is just to follow the lines that God has already cut out. Life is short. Job said, our lives are like bubbles on the water. Just as sparks fly up is full of trouble. Moses said, now, God, if anything, I need you to teach me to number my days. Why do you want to spend half your life trying to do it your way, messing it up, ripping assignment after assignment, when if you just did it God's way, then you could complete the assignment and turn it in. So what are the benefits to following God's plan for your life? I want to say this very quickly, and I won't labor you long here today. But when you commit to the plan of God for your life, you will lose the dread of men. When you commit to God's will for your life, his plan, you, grammatically incorrect, ain't scared of nobody. Jesus was not afraid of the potential dangers that awaited him traveling back to Judea. Yeah, they had planned to stone him. You remember the text. That's why he had left and gone down to preach revival in a different place. They had an arrest warrant out for him. Quite frankly, probably would have been happy receiving him dead or alive. But Jesus was not afraid, because he told the boys, he says, now listen, understand this now. My life is lit by an internal light. No matter how dark the day is, I cannot lose my way. Starts off with an illustration that says when you're walking in the daytime, you don't stumble because you can see. At nighttime, you cannot see, and so you stumble. Jesus says, in a deeper and higher way, he says, my light is on the inside. I'll try it again. John, in 1 John, says that God is light. Jesus says, I am God, and because I have the light on the inside, I see exactly where I'm going, and I never have to stumble. And brothers and sisters, the good news is you have the light of God in your life. And if you would yield to the light of God in your life, you never have to stumble. You never have to choose the wrong job. You never have to choose the wrong school. You never have to choose the wrong mate. Because God is on the inside and he illuminates your decision. But the problem is we walk around with blindfolds on. But listen, when I follow God's plan for my life, I'm not scared of the consequences. I'm not scared of men and what they can do to me, because I have the light of God inside, and he walks with me, and he talks with me. I wish I had a little time. So the first thing is I lose the dread of men. And then I loose, when I'm following God's plan for my life, I loose the dictates of men. I am not concerned what it is people desire for me to do. When I'm following the plan of God for my life, what people have to say is of little, yea, even no consequence to me. Jesus did not care about the plans and devices of men. They had planned to get him if he were to travel back through, but he was unconcerned. He says to these boys, ultimately, summing verses 7 and 11, a summation would be, your friends can't save you, and your enemies can't kill you. That bears repeating again. Jesus says, I'm not afraid because your friends can't save you, but your enemies can't kill you. It doesn't matter what plan they come up with for your life, when I follow God's will for my life, I loose myself from their dictates. God decides that he would use Abraham to be the bloodline through which the Messiah would come. Promised Abraham a son, took a while. He got Isaac and Sarah, and so now they babied and pampered Isaac. Stay with me, if you will. Isaac marries Rebekah, and Rebekah is an outside girl. She had no problem doing yard work, being in the field. And so when she got pregnant, she's pregnant with twins. Now God said, listen now, the younger will be in charge of the older. Oh, this is in the back of their minds. But when the children come, Jacob and Esau, Esau is the oldest, and he enjoyed being outside, hunting and carrying on. And because Isaac was pampered and wish he had lived outside, he liked Esau. And then Rebekah, who had wanted to be domesticated and in the house and softer, nicer things, liked Jacob because Jacob had preferred to be inside the house. And so these parents tried to live their lives through their children when God had told them what the children would do. And they tried to create a way. I heard what God said, but Esau is the oldest and he's going to get the birthright. And so he tried to sneak it in past. And Rebekah said, no, wait a minute now. You can't leave my boy out. I'm going to get him in there and cause him to fix the food and so on and so forth. And ultimately, they overstepped the boundaries because they were trying to force their plan on somebody else. But brothers and sisters, and you understand that Jacob eventually gets the birthright. The good news is, it does not matter what somebody plans for your life. Let me tell you, whatever it is that God has said for you. You see, this is the deal. The deal is, you're going to do it anyway. No, now, this is a bit of ebonics, and you mesh two words together. Might as well go ahead and do it. I mean, it's easier to do what it is God has planned for you than to try to run around what he has perforated. Go ahead and do it the way God designed and be done with it. Because the good news is this. Now, let me calm down and say, when you do it God's way, Doc, it's his plan. If it messes up, it's his fault. I'll try it again. Maybe you missed it. I said, when you do it God's way and there's a problem with the plan, that's his fault. When there's an obstacle in the way, when there's a Red Sea in front of you, that's God's problem. You see, when folk, 2 million folk are hungry, that's God's problem. That's no big problem for God. He just calls quail to come down from the air and hover over the ground about 2 feet. That's no problem for God. And so I learned to yield to God's plan for my life, and I'm not worried about what somebody has to say. Wow, I wish I had time to spend on that. Not only that, but brothers, when you commit to the plan of God for your life, you will, in the best way, love the disciples of the Master. I said before, I'll say again, Jesus would let nothing keep him from fulfilling the will of God for his life, and in doing so, serving the people around him. Jesus says, these that I hold in my hand, the devil in hell can't pluck them out. And Paul encourages us, he says, you should be compassionate to all people, to all people, but especially to those, Galatians 6, to those who are of the household of faith. Brothers and sisters, you wonder how it is you can serve God and serve people. I say to you, get directly in the middle of God's plan for your life. And when you do so, you will be a blessing to the folk around you. This was Jesus's instruction to his disciples. He says, the world will know you by your love, not by the way you give to the Salvation Army, not by the way you do charity in the world, but how you love your brothers and your sisters. The world will know who you are based on how you serve the people around you. When you follow God's plan for your life, you have nobody to be afraid of. And then you don't have to yield to somebody else's plan for your life. Look now. Folk tell me all the time, look now, boy, you have a great voice. Perhaps you should be a radio personality. Others have said you have an analytical mind. Perhaps you should be a lawyer. Others said you are inspirational. Perhaps you should be a motivational speaker. But let me tell you what I know. I know God's plan for my life. Listen now, you get me out there on a limb and you'll leave me to be my own motivational speaker. Get me out on a limb and leave me on the radio, you won't even tune in. But as long as I'm doing what I know I was created to do. Now, you may laugh and say that I don't have other skills. I'd agree. Perhaps there are some things that go lacking related to some skills that I need, but one thing I know how to do. Follow God's plan for my life. And listen now, if I do nothing else, I know I'm God's man to preach. And this is parenthetically, I didn't mean to say this, and I hope that it is an encouragement. But one of my uncles suffering from dementia was a great and powerful preacher. Have forgotten some of the common skills of life, but every morning when he wakes up, he puts on his suit to go to the house of God. Because even though his mind is deteriorating, he remembers the task for which he was put on this earth. Brothers and sisters, I want to tell you that God planned out Jesus' life, and Jesus followed that plan. God told Adam and Eve, listen now, that seed of a woman shall come and shall crush the head of the serpent. Chose Abraham as the lineage through which the Messiah would come. Then chose Jacob's boys, 12, to create a nation. And Then he chose Judah, from which the king would come. Chose David as the example. Then told Micah that this is the birthplace, Bethlehem, of the Messiah. Then God designed a two-part construction crew. Made the Romans make the roads good, and then called John to make them straight. Boy, I wish I had some help right. Look, and then Paul said it best: in the fullness of time. In the fullness of time. Isaiah helps us here. He says, a child was born, a son was given. If I had time right there, Jones, I would have to remind you of the hypostatic union. I'd have to remind you that Jesus was fully God and fully man. Elias, that's why a child was born, but a son was given. Let me try it again now. I'm trying to say he was fully God and fully man. The man was born, a child was born, but the son was given. Jesus lived his life on God's schedule. Jews walked up to Jesus, Matthew 12, and said, give us a sign from heaven. Jesus says, I don't have time to deal with you, but listen now. Jesus said, let me tell you what I will do. He said, listen now, I'll give you my itinerary. Because I live my life on God's schedule. Now let me tell you what I'm going to do. He says, listen now, just as Jonah was 3 days in the belly of a fish. Jesus said, let me tell you what I'm going to do. He says, I'm going to be 3 days in the heart of the earth. That's just my schedule if you want to check on it. And you understand that he stayed in step with the schedule of God for his life. Even when it got difficult and he's there in the garden and he's looking at his watch, he says, now it's time for me to go to the cross. Let me tell you right now, I really don't want to go. But then he said, now that I'm looking at the schedule, not my will, but thine be done. And it did not matter how difficult it was for him, he stayed on the schedule. And you remember how it was that they marched him up Calvary's Hill. And they nailed him to a cross. And I wish I could just have some help right there. And I just skip to the end and say, he died. That right there ought to be exciting for folk who's been born again. Because when he kept his schedule, it benefited me. Why? When he died for me. And every time I get off schedule and do not follow the plan of God for my life, it was nailed to the cross. Every time there's sin in my life, I remember that Jesus kept the schedule and was nailed to the cross. If I was in revival or old church when we were packed out, I might say, yeah, he died. I might say something like, until the sun refused to shine. Yeah, he died. Until the moon dripped away in blood. Yeah, he died. Until the earth shook and reeled like a drunk man. But then I say, yeah. I know I am. To calm down. Yeah. One Sunday morning, he got up just like he said he would. Yeah, he got up.